here. Hey, Rob.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it's not live yet, right?
No. Yes,
Okay.
it is. Yeah.
Hey, all right. Hey, FCBC family, we're going to take a few moments before we get started. Welcome to everyone who's joining us so far. Good to see you all. I'm going to take just a few moments to allow a few other people to jump on with us. Hope everyone is having an amazing evening so far, and we're looking forward to this. Minister Heaven is telling us that we're live.
So is Reverend Alicia. She's on here.
Uh-huh.
Pastor Kendra has logged on. I guess while the folks are coming in, they can tell us how their day is going, PM.
Yeah. And also where you all logging in from.
Yeah.
Or rather where you all are when you're getting in with us. Lisa, hey, how are you? Kendra.
Peace, Kendra. Grateful for you too.
Warkia, what's up? That's an old friend of mine, very good friend of mine.
Minister Heaven, that's way too kind. You can't put us in the same sentence, Minister. I'm emerging.
Don't forget, let us know where you all are located right now. Okay. Alicia says she's logging in from the living room.
Minister Heaven.
But what part of the world are you, Alicia?
I got the Bronx. Right now, we're up to 5 boroughs.
All right. We're going to start in about a minute.
My mother has logged on.
Well, good God.
always good to have
it. Look at God.
Look at God.
Bronx, stand up, Rash. Central Harlem. Newark, New Jersey. The boogie down. What's up, Deacon Darnell? He's on.
Okay. Whitney's in Virginia. Got it.
Well, we're going to get started. I'm going to ask Dr. Harvey to just open us up in a word of prayer as we move forward.
Yeah, let's do that. God and Spirit, we thank you for this opportunity to engage with you. We thank you for an opportunity of spiritual formation. God, we thank you for a conversation that we hope will be illuminating, will be expanding, and will be deepening. And God, we pray now that as our minds come together to have this conversation and engage with your people, that God, somebody will hear some words, some lines, some thought that will allow them to reimagine what their walk looks like in this time and in this season. We already know that what you're about to do and say is about to be revealing and expanding. And for that, we are ever grateful. We submit ourselves to how you want to move and how you want to talk in this moment. And allow us, God, to share that word in the purest way that we can, but also, God, with conviction and with power and with resolute sternness that we believe the word that we say. We look forward to what you're going to do. And we thank you, God, for the evolution that will take place. In that great name, we do pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. I've been looking forward to this for some time. Dr. Harvey actually came up with this idea for tonight, looking at social distancing as a form of spiritual discipline. I know in this moment it's hard to even imagine what that would sound like, what that would be like. And so when Dr. Harvey presented this idea to me, I was really intrigued. Because of what we're dealing with right now. Many of us are dealing with what it means to be in isolation, in social disconnection. And so the idea is, how do we begin to see this as a form of doing a deeper dive digging inward. And so for those of you who may not have been on TNT last week, where Dr. Harvey did TNT with Minister Heaven Brahane, just give you some brief background. Dr. Harvey is a superintendent and senior managing director of the East Harlem Scholars Academy. He's a graduate, undergraduate at Bryant University. He did a master's in theological studies at Harvard Divinity School and a doctorate in leadership, culture, and society from Memphis Theological Seminary. He's an educator, he's a preacher, he's a thinker, he's a cultural architect, he's a brother and a friend, and we're grateful to have him with us tonight. And so many of you who know me, and some have known me for a long time, you know, I'm a believer in kind of the improvisational moment and method of intellectual engagement, even preaching. And so that's what tonight is going to be. And so I told Dr. Harvey he can start it off, kind of lift some issues, some ideas, and then we'll just kind of vibe tonight. And I know some of you may have some questions that may rise. We'll be looking and monitoring your comments and your questions that you'll be raising, and we'll try to do our best to answer as many as possible. So Dr. Harvey, it's on you. Kicking it your way, bro.
I appreciate it, Pastor Mike. And I appreciate being with all of you all tonight and spending some time having this conversation. A conversation that's really been on my mind for a while now, as we were encouraged by the powers that be to enter into this place of social distancing. You know, Pastor Mike, what's been really like on my mind recently, I was reading an article in the Atlantic that said that when you are isolated within groups of 5 or less, that you have increased internal talk. And I've been really sitting with this idea of what does it look like when you are socially distanced to have to engage yourself in conversation. And there's an interesting piece out by this Russian physician, Ignavev, who says that when you are isolated from people that you normally spend time with, people you normally engage with, he said it's crazy is that you talk to yourself in your brain quietly 4,000 times more than you talk out loud when you engage somebody else. And his argument, right, is that when you're isolated, you create narratives and conversations in your head that you wouldn't play out in real life or you wouldn't play out with people. And so I've been really stuck with this idea that when you're socially distanced, it is an opportunity to really engage in interesting conversation with yourself, this idea of radical self-talk, but that there's a fine line there, right? That if you're not careful, that radical self-talk that you can do in moments of social isolation can determine your direction, your mood, how you swing. And so that's been stuck on my mind, this idea of what do we do when we are socially isolated to control for that conversation that we are having in our head about what is happening. And then how do we, if we're talking to ourselves 4,000 times more in our mind than we do other people, how do we learn to become the best conversationalists with our own brain that we can become, but making sure that what we're saying is something worth talking about to yourself, right? Like that's just kind of where I've been stuck.
Yeah. Tell me your take before we even dive into that. Tell me your first kind of reflexive reaction to the idea of that was put forth for us and really a policy now of social distancing. What was your kind of reflexive reaction to that?
So first reaction was trying to place the directive in context, right? So in my lifetime, I have never been forced or encouraged to be socially distanced from people. And so I think for me, it was this moment of having to recognize that being encouraged to socially distance means that I have to personally also prioritize when I do go out into the world. It's like, I think I was stuck with this idea of like, I've never had to sit and prioritize how many times I go out, how many times I decide to expose myself to the external world. And for the first time, here I am having to determine, like on my list of priorities this fall for exposure. And so I think my gut reaction was that, you know, here I am now having to navigate confined spaces and then prioritize external movement and having to really determine what does it mean to move externally about the world. And I think on the backside of that, though, right, I was trying to wrestle with, have I underprivileged community? Because it was not until I was told that I couldn't be in community externally that I really realized how critical it is to my own encouragement, to my own movement, to my own creative license. And so I think to some degree, I've been wrestling with for the last now 3 weeks with how have I undervalued community, and then what is going to be that role of valuing it as I navigate this space. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, so I'm Generation X, right? So
Okay.
The social distancing, the idea of social distancing for me had already been at play. My generation was a generation that, when you were kids, you went outside and you played. Your parents told you to go outside and play. And that outdoor play was a form of building community. It was learning certain, I think, subconscious notions of what it meant to be socially engaged with your friends.
Yeah.
The thing we did was about human interface. Then you have millennials and then Generation Z, who are complete digital natives. And in some ways, technology had already created this notion of social distancing already. You had less human interface.
Yeah.
You saw less human contact. I remember years ago when my daughter was in high school, and that's when Uvu was popular. I think that was Uvu was the name of the app. And I remember hearing her laughing in her bedroom. And I remember thinking that there were people in the house. And I go in the bedroom and she's on the computer with like 3-4 of her friends. They were building community. Now, in many ways, it gave us a wider reach. It gave us wider access. It made us all connected. We became global citizens, truly global citizens, and not just people of the neighborhood, right?
Yeah.
And so, but at the same time, something was lacking in the human interface component. Well, that has been going on for quite some time, where FaceTime and Instagram and all these other technological advances have minimized the amount of human contact. So now look at what's happening with social distancing not happening by way of technology, but now a government decree. Now, all of a sudden, whereas these technologies were good when we also, in addition, had human interaction, now when these technologies are all that we have, now there's a thirst now, a crave. Who would have imagined that we would get to a point where we would start to crave handshakes and daps and hugs and embracing, right? Where we begin, it's one thing when you do it social distancing for a week or 2 weeks, but we're going in now to a month, and we don't know when this is going to end. And so we now find ourselves at a place where, okay, I have Zoom and I have Instagram and I have FaceTime and I have Skype, but that doesn't replace sitting in front of a person I care for, a friend, having a cup of coffee, having a drink, having a meal. Those are the things we crave. And let me say this. There are people say like, well, if you have a family, that's good. Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. When you're in a house with the same people for a long period of time, you still crave interaction for some other folk who you used to interacting with. So the thing is that, and I just saw somebody, Alicia made a good point. You could opt in for those technologies. That's the thing. You had a choice of going into those technologies, but you always had an option. Now you have no option for the human interface. And now on a very spiritual level, right? We're looking for deeper contact. Now, can you just think about that? It's 2020. And with all the technological advancement we've seen in this world, right now, we crave simple things. When was the last? Think about this: the importance of getting fresh air. Taking a walk. Right. That's where we are right now. And so I think the thing about what intrigued me about your idea with this is why it intrigued me, because I knew that there are many people who did not understand the gravity of this pandemic initially. And there's some who still don't, who feel like, a couple of months will be back to normal. And it's one thing when you're thinking in your mind, this is for a few weeks, a few months. But, there's an article I had our leadership team read from the Atlantic as well about the aftermath of the pandemic. I've sent it to a few people. And the idea that social distancing may be in play for months. And then think about this. if they find a vaccine, and as some doctors have said, a vaccine is still not a cure, which means the possibility that if we treat coronavirus like the flu, so we'll have coronavirus season.
Right.
So what does that mean, right? What does that mean? Does that mean then during that season we go into months of social isolation? Right. So now you have the idea that we have to prepare our minds for the possibility that certain months out the year we'll lose human contact.
Yeah.
Directly with friends and people like that. So this is an interesting moment. So idea of now, how do I, and I think you and I in our talk conversation earlier, I said, how do we co-opt the moment, take it over?
Yes.
And make meaning from it.
Yes.
How do we make this a moment of introspection and internal growth? So honestly, we don't lose it.
Right.
Right.
Right. I mean, but to your point, man, what's interesting is if this is indeed going to be a cyclical virus, how we make meaning of it, to your very point, means that we are precedent setting for the next time this or something like it rolls around. So co-opting the moment really, in many ways, is also foundation setting, because how you respond to this moment is going to some degree in your brain consciousness set, this is how then I respond to any moment of social distancing.
Yeah.
Right? It's like it's a cool opportunity. To your point, it's a cool opportunity, because I think what it positions us to do is say, I'm getting ready to hardwire myself to co-opt moments of social isolation, so that I have a frame of reference and I have a connecting point for the next time, to your point, for the next time I have to do it, because we know this is not the last one.
Yeah. And so one of the things I've been telling and saying to some of my colleagues and friends, and that is this moment in world history, this moment is giving us an opportunity to reimagine certain, let's say, since we here at FCBC on the church thing, to reimagine certain religious and theological, not just practices, but theological frameworks. For example, there are people who can liken this moment to the Reformation of Martin Luther. Let me tell you why I liken it to that. Because if you think about the Reformation of the church, for those who may not know, the Reformation led by Martin Luther led to what we now call the Protestant church for the most part. And if you think about it, though, Robert, his Reformation was not necessarily a theological one. It was a reformation of practice.
Yeah.
He was assaulting the practices of the church with regard to indulgence. But the theology, and he also did the taboo thing, which was to translate the Bible into German, making it accessible. Yeah. But there was really not a theological reformation per se. So this moment, they're experiencing a kind of reformation in the Lutheran sense, in the sense of we're now forced to engage in new practices.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And not just practices out of luxury. Like if we did, FCBC has streaming, that's a luxury to be able to provide streaming.
Right.
But now it's a practice out of necessity.
Yeah.
Right. We have to do, like you and I don't know if we would have gotten to do this as soon without what we've experiencing now. So we're experiencing on one level a reformation of practices within the church. Now the digital reality is coming to the forefront. What I'm saying is, in addition to the Lutheran Reformation, or making this reformation of practice like the Lutheran one, now we have an opportunity to imagine a theological reformation where we begin to press the theological frameworks, the foundations, and most importantly, the language we use. And as Alicia said, out of necessity, we have to reimagine the language. We have to reimagine how we speak about faith now, how we speak about religion. And it makes sense because we're being driven to this place. Like right now, we could have led a class on spiritual disciplines, and we could have sat here and talked about prayer, fasting, like that. And those things have a place. But now, what are the new spiritual disciplines? That's why this conversation with those who are watching is for over the next 2 weeks, because it's us rest through in real time. What are the new spiritual disciplines that will emerge because of social distancing?
Right. That's real. You know, so it's interesting you say that, right? So what popped in my mind, you familiar with Ron Thiemann from Harvard Div?
Yeah.
Thiemann, right? So Thiemann used to do this interesting argument where he said that to your point about there are these Reformation seasons. He says, so there are Reformation seasons, and then he says there are alignment seasons where your reimagined or reformed theology gives birth to new theolinguistics. So you walk out with new language, new theopraxis. So you walk out, right, with new practices that can activate. He said, but then you walk out with the new communal theology. So as you wrestle with your personal theology in moments like these, if you don't come out with new language, new practices, and a new sense of community, have you wasted the moment? Have you wasted that opportunity of theological?
Back that up, bro. That I hope people who are watching, if you got your pen, your paper, there are 3 things that he just outlined. Outline those 3 new things you have to come out of this season with.
Yeah, so you come out with theolinguistics, right? New language. You come out with new practices.
New practices
with new community.
Yes. And in this way, it may be new communities, new ways of imagining community.
Yes, new ways of imagining,
which are connected, to the practices as well, and also reframing familiar language. Quarantine is not a new word; we have to reframe it. Right. Isolation is not a new word; we have to reframe it. So let me ask you, Robert, if you had to think about right now, one thing, and we'll probably cover a few tonight, but one thing that this moment may, and I'm gonna go back to the word co-op, because let me explain why I used the word earlier, family, about co-opting this moment. It is a dangerous thing, and I've heard it, and there's maybe some who even feel this way who are listening. I've heard this from clergy and other people, lay people alike, over the past few weeks, who said things like, well, this is what God intended so that we could do X. Right. Tragically enough, there was a pastor in Louisiana who, when this started, who initially said that God is sending the coronavirus so we could be still and rest. And 8 days after he said that, he passed away. Right. So there's this tendency, because of our unwillingness to accept uncertainty. We start creating explanations to give ourselves a sense of calm. The problem is that some of these creations run us into theological and emotional walls. And some of these explanations also do more damage, right, than good. So I don't like I personally am not of the ilk that tried to find quick fixes theologically to existential crisis. So I'm not going to be like, well, listen, God is up to something, or God has initiated this, or this is being done so that. When we start making those comments, it's not that God is not in the midst. I know that. But when we start making these explanations, it's really designed to ease our panic versus diving deeper into where we are, who we are, and what we will emerge as when this is over. So if you had to think about a thing, and we probably gonna cover a few tonight, let's begin with one for now. What, in the co-option of the social distancing narrative, what is something, for those who are listening, watching, let's begin this conversation of the new emerging spiritual disciplines. What would you say is one thing we can begin to reimagine as a spiritual discipline in the midst of social distancing?
So I think, here's one that you actually helped me think, that I was thinking through from something you said Sunday about communion. So I've been wrestling with, is this going to give us a new practice of sacrament, right? So far, we have these two ideas of sacrament, typically in the Protestant church, one that is baptism, and the other that is the celebration of communion. And sacrament, of course, being this means of grace. How do you distribute grace? But I'm wondering if out of social distancing, is there a space in which we create a new sacrament where the grace that we are extending to people from God is a grace grounded in, and I'm trying to word it in the church's way I can, but a grace that is grounded in the idea.
Don't be churchy. Don't be churchy. Yeah.
So like there is something sacramental about not having to deal with folks in crowds and not needing an excuse other than I'm socially distanced.
Okay, gotcha.
And I'm wrestling with this idea, right, that if you think about the crowd engagement, I'm a millennial, and we love to create an excuse to get out of a thing, right? So that's just kind of part of our sacrament is I got to come up with a reason why I can't make it. But I'm wondering if there's a grace out of this moment of being able to name, I'm putting myself in social distance as a way to deal or to spend time with myself. And there is no other explanation needed other than the grace of being by oneself.
So so I'm gonna keep pushing. So again, for those who are watching, in this improvisational moment, this is like, me, the trumpet player, and like Rob, the sax player, and we bouncing off one another with these ideas. So let me say this the way I heard it. So this moment, one way that we co-opt social distancing as a spiritual discipline is that how we take what has been imposed upon us because of crisis, now make it as a moment of what's the word I know as it becomes now. So let me go back. So out of this pandemic, we are in this pandemic, we're developing new spiritual disciplines, and out of this pandemic, we create out of the disciplines new habits of practice.
Yep.
So some of us, so that from this point forward, one of those disciplines is the ability to be intentional about time alone versus being shrouded and crowded, right? If not by people, at least technology. I'm gonna give you an example. When we did last year, when we did we did a digital fast.
Okay.
And people were going through with no technology, unplugged from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I mean, people dropped off after a week or 2 weeks. Couldn't handle it. We had a celebration, a party. I forget the lounge we were at when it was over. And the people who stuck it out. And what I realized is that people could not imagine life without the distractions.
Sure. Yes.
Right? Because what we don't realize is some of us are distracting ourselves so much, right? So that we don't have to do the work that is built into time alone.
Yes.
Right.
Hands down.
Yeah. So that means that maybe in this, and the reason why I'm gonna use that word again, I'm gonna keep referring for those who are listening. The idea of co-opt. Co-opt means that you're taking this moment, you're taking over this moment instead of social distancing, controlling our lives and leading us into spaces where we find ourselves in rebellion mode. Because see, this was what happens is we're angry, right? Because of social distancing. We're mad that we're in these confinement quarters. We're upset that our lives have been so drastically interrupted, and our conversations and our body language is in rebellion against this social distancing. And we're upset. So what we're suggesting tonight, family, is that instead of being in a posture of rebellion, which fuels anger, which fuels bitterness, which fuels angst, which fuels frustration, which all in this moment becomes toxic and is not productive in this season.
Yes.
Take the power in this moment and say, if they gave me social distancing, let me give myself introspection.
Yes.
Right?
Because what's interesting, people. So I was, I'm watching all these. You live in New York City. You get a commercial 5 times a day from the commissioner telling you stay in the house unless you have to go out for groceries or go get your medicine. But I love the last line of the commissioner's commercial. It says, "Do it for you, do it for your neighbor, do it for the city." Right? This idea that maybe if for no other reason, co-opt this moment, because in your being able to find peace in the isolation with self, you're doing it for you, but then by proxy of doing something for you, you're doing it for your neighbor, and then you're doing it for your city. And if we take it wide, you're doing it for the country, you're doing it for the world. And so even in a moment where you are having an opportunity to self-isolate, be with self, talk to self, spend time with self, by proxy of taking advantage of that moment, you may be giving other people an opportunity to also live better, live wholer, live fuller, because you didn't expose yourself in a moment when you needed to just be with self in isolation. So it's almost like the commissioner gave us the idea of new language, a new commandment, that everything I got to do post this, I got to do it for myself, for my neighbor, and for my city.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe there's a commandment given.
But let me tell you how that's deep though, because I'll let you, but we can both talk about it. Today is Monday, Thursday.
Yeah.
Right. And that word Monday is a Latin word for commandment. It's taken from what we call the Last Supper scene. Jesus washes the feet of the disciples, and that commandment is to love one another as I loved you. So think about introspection, time away, which is following Jesus' practices, right? Because in the midst of Jesus' ministry, you constantly see those moments where he gets away, where he steals away. And then it is as if every moment where you see Jesus got away by himself to pray, he comes back, not just with new energy, but also new directives. It's as if those moments away are like he has marching orders and everything shifts, right? So if I take Monday, Thursday, not just the liturgical practice and the remembrance of washing feet, but the idea of what that I in loving myself, just like the commissioner said, it is an expression of loving my neighbor, and loving my community. So that time I spend in introspection, it's what my pastor used to call retrospective introspection.
I love it.
It is to look in and look back at myself. And somehow I'm not just doing it for myself. Right? I'm a part of it, because I'll say, now I'll let you jump in, because years ago, and I always refer to it, we had a spiritual retreat years ago, and when Pastor Torrey, who now pastors in Charleston, South Carolina, he was on staff, and in our spiritual retreat, he did a session that was called Selfish for the Sake of Community.
Got it.
And what he said, and he talked about his own experience in ministry, and I'm sure you've experienced this, and I've experienced it as well, where when you're doing ministry, you always feel guilty about taking time for yourself. You feel like you're always having to be there for other people, pour into other people, pray for other people, serve for other people. And what he was experiencing, because he was speaking out of his own experience, was you get burnt out, right? You experience burnout. And so he said, in the midst of his talk, he said, you know what, there's going to come a time where you have to, and he was saying to the members, you have to accept that there will be a time where I'm not accessible or available because I need to pour into myself. That is no different from Jesus stealing away?
Right.
No, and now I just borrowed language from Jesus, but that's the language of ancestors.
That's
stealing, but that's stealing away to get away from the troubles of this world, to find a place where they could find the mental strength to sustain another day. So if our ancestors knew that they had to steal away, why is it that we're afraid, right, to steal away and spend that time? And there comes a moment, I'll let you get it after this, there comes a moment where we have to be able to tell people in our re-narrating this social distancing, I need to do this. I need to spend this time. I need to discover the internal resources that exist within me for your sake, for the sake of our community.
Yeah. So it is that part. It is that part right there of me spending time for the sake of the community. But to your point about stealing away, you dropped something so subtly that I think was so powerful. Is you said, so Monday, Thursday, right? You have the commandment part, but in the liturgy part of Monday, Thursday, it was the foot washing and the communion. But what is interesting, PM, is Sunday for most in the Black Christian tradition, we celebrated first Sunday, so we had the opportunity to celebrate communion. But what is so interesting is that what does it look like now in a socially distanced world to wash your own feet? To reimagine the role of priest, self as priest to self, right? So we have this, we have created, particularly in Black religion, we have created an institution that is based on the idea that if pastor doesn't do it, then maybe it lacks a level of sacredness because pastor didn't do it. But I'm wondering if social distancing helps us realize pastor needs to be as isolated as I am so that pastor don't get sick. So I got to wash my own feet. I got to bless my own table. I got to call on my own name. And what does it mean in this season to say, maybe the new discipline is self as priest and self as priest of my own sacramental journey in a way that we have not always given people, as a Black preacher and a Black pastor, we've not always given people permission to be their own priest.
Well, it goes back to where we started with the Lutheran idea of the priesthood of all believers.
Yes.
And now people have to really take that seriously in this moment. That's why, for those who saw the video on Sunday that I did about communion, I did that video because, and I'll be honest with you, that I just was bombarded on social media with persons showing, well, look, you don't need the little cup we usually have. Right. Go ahead and get yourself some Wonder Bread and some or some saltines. And some people was like, man, bump the Welch's. I'm gonna give me some wine. So you know, and I had a picture. It'd be funny. I had a picture one of my friends sent me of a plate with some saltines and a bottle of Great Mad Dog 2020. And do 2020, and that they was, but anyway, I did it because people, I was watching these different videos done, and it was as if people were in a panic. And here was what I interpreted: how do I replace the symbols?
Yes.
Right. Yeah. How do I get a hold of the symbols of communion? And so what I was saying in that video is forget the symbol. Yeah. Because symbols always are signifiers, pointing to something deeper. Because if you get intoxicated with the symbol and don't get the substance, you've missed the point of the experience. Right. It's no longer sacramental. Right. So this goes back for those who want to go back in Corinthians and read the argument that was taking place in the early Corinthian church, where there was a letter. We don't have necessarily the letters that were written to Paul, but we have the letters that Paul wrote back to the community. Yeah. And from one of those letters, it was apparent that there were people, because what we call communion was really a meal as Jesus practiced it. Yes. They were having meals. And the frustration for some of the Corinthian Christians was that they were people who were only coming to the meal to drink and eat. And what Paul says in the letter is, listen, And it's not that you had to be a certain age to take it. The issue is if you're doing this for the symbolism of it, for the wine and for the food, he said, you're bringing damnation. The substance is to do it in remembrance of the mission, the work of Jesus. So these ideas of moving past the symbols to the substance of it, this affords us the opportunity to become a people of substance and not a congregation of people who worship symbols.
Yeah. That is so real. So it's interesting when you talked about it being the meal. You know what? Most folks don't realize that the nickname for that meal was the love feast.
Love feast.
That the feast was a coming together in order to demonstrate love for one another, love for the work of the carpenter. And I'm wondering, it's interesting. I've seen so many of my friends and colleagues engage in virtual brunches and coming together. And what is interesting about the virtual brunch, the virtual dinner, the virtual drink with a friend is there is a possibility that there was more of a love feast happening in social distancing when you have to be intentional than typical coming together where we're going to go grab a bite because church is over, or we're going to go grab a bite because we just left the club or the bar. But when you have to be so intentional to schedule it, put it on calendars, get the login, prepare your own meal, sit at your coffee table, there's an intentionality to that love feast that makes me wonder, maybe our Zoom brunches and our Zoom dinners more closely resemble the early churches coming together.
No, because watch this. And I know we actually may seem like we're digressing. We're not really digressing. But what is happening is that now the Zoom brunch, the Zoom happy hour, the FaceTime connection, it is as opposed as you just gave an example. Hey, Sunday, let's go to brunch, have some food, bottomless drinks. After the club, let's go out to eat, let's hang out. Now, these connections and these rituals are for our sanity.
Yes.
They're for our sanity and for our well-being, which at the end of the day, koinonia and building community is for our sanity.
Yes.
For our well-being.
Yes.
Right? And that is why this is critical. If we come out of this moment and we simply recapture what the brunch meant, what communion meant, what hanging out meant, we've lost an opportunity.
Yes.
But if we now look at these moments as forging meaningful human interaction, right?
Yeah.
Then we've elevated it, right? And then let's now go back. Then if we look at moments where we are intentional about our social distancing, it is done in such a way that it allows us to deepen, our human interactions. It affords me, because see, let's get real with it. If I don't do that work of introspection that is shaped in silence, stillness, and isolation, which you will always get from me is a person, right, who is almost at most times in performance mode.
Yes.
That means you never really get to capture who I am because I have not evolved, because I have not been intentional about the deep dive work necessary to emerge with my evolving self.
Yes. Yeah. So have you ever seen Dark Knight?
Yeah.
So do you remember, what's that, Heath Ledger?
Yeah.
What was so crazy is I was reading this article about performers, actors, and it talked about the power of isolating oneself after playing a role in a movie, because if an actor or an actress is not careful, they will end filming and stay that person.
Stay in that space,
In that space. And I'm wondering if if we co-opt it, if we make this an opportunity to say, let me evaluate who I've been playing for X time, and use this moment to say, I need to disconnect from that before I go back out into the world, so that I go back into the world, to your very words, evolve, new, and authentic.
Yeah. And so
it's interesting because to those same three things, if I don't do this work, and I don't take advantage of the moment, if I don't co-opt this season, I will go back into the world with same language, same practice, same view of community, which means I didn't evolve when I had an opportunity to evolve.
Yeah, yeah. And then we'd be begging, I just need some time alone.
Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah. I just need some time alone. And see, that's the work for me that is critical, not as a Christian, but that's critical as a human being.
Yes.
To be able to do that kind of work so that I can come to a new place of understanding. See, this is, and again, I'm going to keep throwing that word, that co-opting.
Yeah.
You, those who are watching, and I know that this moment is problematic, but what you have to always remember is that you are not powerless in this moment.
Yeah.
I read something that was said that this, I always talk about, there are things that happen to us. So we can say this now. COVID-19 and this pandemic has happened to us, right? Mm-hmm. How will we happen to it?
Yes. Yes.
Right? How will we happen to it?
Yes.
And how we happen to it is connected to how we respond to it in ways that do not reinforce feelings of helplessness, of weakness, of impotence. That's why the co-op, we have to take this moment, grab this moment, reimagine this moment, define this moment, so that I don't find myself in rebellion against something that can actually shift who I am and reshape who I am, so that I can come out of this. Right? It's like it's something my friend and I talked the other night. It's the work. I'm gonna keep referring back to the ancestors. It's the work they did, right? So imagine this, those who are listening, Dr. Harvey, imagine this. You are in the cotton fields, picking from sun up to sundown. What they say, can't see morning, they can't see night, right? And your hands are bloody and bruised and cut from picking and working. Our ancestors were able to look at their bloody, bruised hands and then say, I looked at my hands.
Yes.
And my hands look new.
Yeah. Yeah.
The hands weren't new, but the lens by which they evaluated themselves had shifted.
Yes.
Right? Watch this. If my great-great-great-grandmother can do that under the threat of death and duress, I have to be able to do that under social distancing.
Yes.
I gotta be able to do that work. I have to be able to say, this was not what I planned, but I got a plan for it.
Right. So much of that work, so it's interesting, so much of that work that they did, so of course it was psychological work where they had to change their perception and how they were going to approach the thing to reclaim power. But then you hit something, the language they then attacked that work with, they reworded how they talked about it. So they talked about it as the pain and the suffering and the catastrophe of the moment. But what's interesting is our ancestors had a power of that self-talk where they knew that it was what I tell myself in this moment that's going to be the thing that will shift how the moment and I interact with one another.
Yeah.
And I've been on this Catherine Keller kick. The Catherine Keller says that every moment of suffering, you and God all agree to get in the ring together. It is what you talk about when you get in the ring that determines how you, suffering, and God are going to play in the ring. And our ancestors knew that when I get into it, when I'm out on the field, that field, me and that master or that overseer who has that whip and I are in a direct conversation with each other. And they don't even realize what I'm saying about them because my language is subversive and cold. And I'm wondering if in social distancing, will we co-opt the moment to reimagine how we talk to ourselves in this moment?
Here we go.
As a way to tell our own brain, to your point, I got power over it and it not over me, right? And so I think about this this Russian philosopher who argues that he says every time you open up your mouth, you are praying, but the prayer is a prayer to your own self, and it's what you say to yourself that will shift the environment of the space. And I'm wondering if how many of us have co-opted every day as an opportunity to open our mouth and to say something as a prayer to ourselves that we are bigger than this moment today.
Yeah, because and I'm glad you said that. I mean, literally open our mouths, right? And not just engage in thoughts rambling through our minds, but literally open our mouths, because this is what it means to speak to the moment. Yeah. So I mean, this inward journey, this inward journey that we're talking about of co-opting social distancing, and give us the three things again, Dr. Harvey, that it should cause us to do. Language,
new practices, new imagination of community.
Yeah. So social distancing then affords us the opportunity for new language, new practices, and new ways of imagining community, right? And that's critical. Yep. So in doing that and in seeing that, this moment now becomes a moment of necessary engagement with ourselves. Yeah. So that it's not just about tapping into God's grace. Now, this is a reason, but it's like this. Imagine that this moment, co-opted social distancing can become a salvific act. I must do this. Yeah. To save my mind. Yeah. In this moment. Yeah. So I do not see myself constantly through the lens as a victim, which at the end of the day, if you consistently see yourselves through the lens of a victim, you die a death before the real one. Yes. Right? Yes. So this is why I keep referring back to the ancestors and why we need to tap in. And for those who may not be of African descent, you don't have to have the narrative to gain the power from the narrative. Right. So the idea of what they were, just think about it. Just think about this. And the reason why this is so pressing on me is because we just went to our men's retreat, right? Right before everything started, to Montgomery. We went to the Lynching Memorial and the Lynching Museum. And I saw men there who were shaken, who were saddened, who were crying, who were hurting in that moment. But at the same time, I looked at the resolve of our ancestors, right? Yeah. Right. And there was a line there from Toni Morrison where she said, they don't like to see your neck unnoosed and straight. She said, so love your neck. Yeah. So love your neck. Right. Yeah. And so the ability to take what has happened to them, and reimagine a life. Yes. Right. Yes. Where they could then thrive. You know, the kind of strength it took to endure brutality, but still want to make a baby. Right. They were giving birth in the midst of brutality. Yeah. So if they were able to give birth under the most dire, dangerous, destructive space, my God, I know that COVID-19 is real. I know it is. I know it is. But I know it ain't gonna last for 200 plus years. Right. And if people were able to develop resources, right, that help them endure for 10 generations. Yeah. We have to take this moment, reach in deep, see what we come out with. And guess what? When we dig deep inside, here's what Garner Taylor said one time in his Beecher lectures. He said the idea is that if I reach inside of myself deep enough, I'll find you. Yes. Right? Yes. So again, my wanting to do introspection in this moment of social distancing is not just for me. It's so that I find deeper ways of connecting to you. Yes. Deeper ways of connecting to my community. Yes. And how do I And what accompanies the connection? My new language, my new practices, and my new way of seeing community.
Yeah. That is so real. So listen, you dropped something. You said that in slavery, they still kept giving birth in the midst of the brutality.
Woo.
Which makes me wrestle with this idea. What was it about their belief about each birth carrying possibility for newness that made them not want to run away from the brutality, but realize that if I keep giving birth, I am giving birth, and you argue this, I'm giving birth to new embodiments of possibility regularly in the brutality. So I'm wondering, right, what are we giving birth to in the brutality of the moment out of belief that everything we give birth to in this season is the potential embodiment of possibility for God, something new and revolutionary?
Yeah, look, you ain't got to convince me on that. That's the language I believe and trust. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, we often say at FCBC, you walk inside, you see on some of the walls, I am the embodiment of infinite possibilities, right? And you thought that being the embodiment of infinite possibilities was always going to be a sweet moment?
Listen.
And was always going to be a mountaintop experience?
Listen.
No. If you can't see new possibilities in the valley, you have spiritual eyes.
Yeah.
So that's what the moment is. So as we talk about, spiritual discipline and social distancing, this is at the end of the day about your power.
Yeah.
That you choose to exercise as opposed to surrendering, retreating, right? Yes. And simply rebelling through anger.
Yeah.
Nah, man.
Yeah.
No, this moment is ripe. It's ripe. But we have to. Now, here's the one thing we didn't talk about. Maybe we make sure we cover this on next week. But I'm gonna drop it out here now. We could chase it on next week. But the thing is that everything we're saying, I'm gonna go back to your things: new language, new practices, new community. There's something that is not talked about that enables this transition, and that is one word: courage. Courage.
Yes.
Courage. Because right now, the reason why we see, and we've talked about this, Robert, the reason why we see some of the same trite words being used, or some of the same phrases being used by religious people that's been around and is not really speaking to the moment, is because it is safe to retreat, right, to dead language.
Yes.
And it's safe to do that. It takes courage to say, I have to speak differently.
Yeah.
Be different.
Yeah.
Engage different. And here it is. And that the moment, and let me tell you, this moment is requiring something. Yeah, Lisa, I'm seeing that. Powerful, unshakable, and adaptable. That's the language, empowering language to encourage ourselves even in this moment. If we don't muster the courage.
Yes.
Because that's why, for me, that was such an important scripture a few weeks ago, that Joshua, be strong and courageous.
Yep.
It ain't strong and courageous for the sake of being strong and courageous.
Right.
In the context of this conversation, it's being strong and courageous to not be afraid of new language, to not be afraid of new practices, to not be afraid of reimagined community.
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? To some degree, it's interesting with the idea of courage. In this season, it takes more courage to be with oneself at home than to do anything out in the world.
Yes.
And that is mind-blowing, I think, for a community, for a season, for a generation.
Hold on, say that one more time. I don't want anybody who missed that to catch that. Say it again.
Yeah, it takes more courage to be with yourself at home than to be out in the world doing anything right now.
Yeah.
Right? Because it is as a generation that is so committed to the doing, the being, the busyness, the act, the creation, the production. The courage in this season, in COVID season, the courage is, can I be so courageous enough to sit with me in this season and discover the warrior in me while I'm sitting with me? Because
yeah, keep going.
Because you're right. That my natural default in sitting with myself in this season is to find everything else in me but the warrior. I find my loneliness, I find my negativity, I find my frustration. But what does it look like for me to find my warrior in social distancing? To spend this time cultivating an I am kind of self-talk where I come out ready to fight.
Go now, push it. If I ask everybody who's listening, watching, do you want to tap into your inner warrior? I don't think anyone is going to say no.
No, right.
Because that's the easy thing. Do you want to tap into your inner warrior? Yes. Here's what I'm going to add to what you said. It's the journey to the warrior that's the challenge.
Yes.
Because the journey to the warrior within, right, requires this kind of moment.
Yes.
Because watch this. To get to the warrior, I gotta bypass an insecure 8-year-old boy. I gotta bypass the damaged, traumatized 12-year-old. I gotta bypass the wounded 15-year-old. I gotta bypass the scared 19-year-old. I gotta go through all these phases of myself, because it's not that the warrior is hiding, it's that the warrior has been covered.
Yes.
By these other identities that I have forged. So watch this. Sometimes my schedule, my job, my friends, my busyness are the things I require to avoid taking the journey.
Yeah. Yes.
So what happens now imagine, when now you don't have the usual routines you had, what happens possibly when you look back on your routine now and say, my God, my entire day was designed to avoid seeing myself.
Yes. God.
like my whole schedule is based on a subconscious avoidance, because I'm afraid to be introduced to my own strength.
Yes.
My own power. And that's why, again, I'm going to go back to this notion of social distancing and spiritual discipline. It is taking back the moment, co-opting the moment, and then using courage to take the journey of self-discovery, because that's the only way I tap into that warrior. Now, there's one or two ways I've discovered it. Let me tell you, and I'll share this personally. There's one or two ways you discover that warrior. And I'm glad to even this is why I love improvisational stuff. You end up coming up with stuff that we didn't even plan on talking about. It just takes us whatever. But I think there are two ways you can discover the warrior.
Okay.
And I prefer one over the other, but I've experienced both.
Okay.
Right, here it is. I make the intentional decision that I am going to take this journey.
Yep.
And let's be clear. Now, because I want to encounter the me devoid of pretentiousness.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. So I do that hard work. I start the introspective. I start having the kind of self-talk.
Yep.
Right. That pushes me to a place of transparency, vulnerability, and honesty.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And I begin that journey and realize that it's not a quick journey. You're not going to hear this conversation tonight, get up tomorrow and decide today I will be the warrior. No, you gotta decide today. I will take the journey.
Yes.
Right. Yes. I will take the journey and begin the journey. So that's when you make a decision. Right. And to take that journey. The other way I've discovered is honestly that I don't prefer at all. Yeah. It is when, for me, it came in a moment of sickness where I almost died.
Yeah.
And it was literally at the point of death that I encountered my strength.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Strength that my suffering introduced me to.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm going to say, I don't like that way.
Right.
I don't want us to have to discover that way.
Right.
But it was an introduction where my pain became matchmaker.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It said, Michael, here's the strength that you didn't know was here. Yeah. Because you always thought about this moment and you were afraid of it. And when the moment came, you discovered that you were bigger than it.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
So can I propose a third?
Come on, let's go. Let's go.
Third way is, what do you do, or you discover you start the journey when you have that hard brick wall encounter of running out of characters that you can play. Right? Like, there is this idea where at some point you run out of costumes. You run out of lies. You cannot write any other scripts, and you are left with the decision. Then you go to one. Do I then take the journey? Because at this point, all I have left is my rawest, most authentic, dirtiest, filthiest me. And I got to take that me and run the journey to discover the best warrior in me.
Let's use your image. It's all the characters have spoken all their lines, and there's no longer a script left.
Yes. Yes.
And now all you are sitting with is, like you said, the raw you.
Yeah.
And now watch this. Watch this. Now the true script must emerge.
Yes. Yes.
It can't come from the outside in. It must emerge.
Yes.
And that becomes the key. I mean, I'm gonna keep going back to this for those who are watching. My biggest concern in this moment of social distancing has been persons feeling completely powerless. And those feelings of being powerless feed in to feelings of inadequacy.
Yes. Yes.
Anxiety, and ultimately lead into dark spaces where depression becomes our companion.
Yeah.
And I say this for those who are watching because as these weeks and months continue, those spaces that are created by anxiety and panic and fear and depression will be more real for some.
Yes. Yes.
The issue is, how do I take back myself and co-opt what is happening and begin to tap in to the power I have? And maybe what we're suggesting tonight is that social distancing can become not something forced upon, but intentionally we do to gain a deeper awareness of who we are and a deeper awareness of our place in this world, so that out of that discovery, we do the work that Dr. Harvey is talking about tonight, which is to then create new language, new practices, and new forms of community. Listen, before we go tonight, because I want to hold us to 75 minutes, and also I'm going to do it because I want y'all to come back next Thursday with part 2. I want Dr. Harvey, you get the last words tonight to kind of connect some dots and kind of leave us with some food for thought.
Yeah, appreciate PM. You know, I think you hit it. This idea of new language, new practice, and new community is a model that was created by our ancestors and used by our ancestors to survive a season of brutality. And in the same way that it was having to create newness out of a season of pain that got them through, we must hold on to that truth that every brutal season, every virus season is an opportunity for us, if done with co-option, to come out of this thing discovering a courage and a warrior that has always been there, but needed a moment to start that journey. And so I think you ended it well, that this is, I think, the perfect pause point for next week to explore then in that new language, new practice, and new vision of community. What does that look like? How does that sound as we do spiritual discipline work individually in order to save the collective, to care for our neighbor, our city, our country, and our world? And we'll see where the conversation goes next week.
Man, I love it. I love it. Let's. I'm gonna close out in prayer. Yeah. God, we thank you on tonight, and we're so grateful for how you continue to shape us, oh God. Thank you for these improvisational moments, oh God, of radical inbreaking of your presence and also moments of discovery. God, this is a difficult season, and many people, oh God, have felt the weight, the pain, and the loneliness of social distancing. But God, thank you for your words of revelation tonight that emerged in this conversation, that this is a time to co-opt the narrative and begin to use this moment as a moment of self-discovery, of creative encounter, so that we come out of this season, oh God, with new language, new practices, and a new sense of community. God, we thank you for who you are. And God, and I've learned this, Lord, that there are people even right now who want you to do, God, fix it. God, take it away. God, heal it. God, save. But God, we've learned in our journey that sometimes divine presence is more powerful than divine performance. Yeah. So God, we thank you for your presence and being in this season of Lent, of resurrection. Thank you for also in this season reminding us of Emmanuel, that you are God with us. We love you, Lord. We thank you, God. And it's in your name we pray. Amen. Listen, brother, thank you for this tonight. I look forward to next week. To all of you, peace and blessings. And we'll see you next Thursday, 7 p.m. for part 2 of social distancing as a spiritual discipline. Peace, y'all.
Peace.